Hello, folks. This is Joe from MIGeekScene. I'm here at Astronomicon with Ming Chen, podcaster supreme, and also from AMC's Comic Book Men. How are you doing, Ming?
I'm doing great. I love that you led off with podcaster and you added the word supreme. That's very flattering. And then, Comic Book Men is also something I do secondary. I like that, though. It's all about podcasts, man.
Well, I know podcasts are very important to you.
They are.
And I definitely will plan on touching on that later in this interview. So, obviously, since you work on Comic Book Men, you're surrounded by comic books and whatnot. First exposure to comics that you remember?
6 years old. I was in Jackson, Michigan at a elementary school that no longer exists there anymore. But one of my classmates handed me a copy of Avengers 214, which had just come out. And he was like, check this out. This is really cool. And I had vaguely known what comic books were at that age, but I'd never read one before. So I flipped through it. On the cover is the Ghost Rider Iron Man being taken down by the Ghost Rider. They're both flying. Captain America and Tiger are in the back. They're like, oh my God. And, just looking at the cover, I'm like, what is this? I'd never seen anything like it before. I think that maybe the closest thing I'd seen that was that exciting was probably Star Wars at that point. But I'd never read any superhero comics. And I flipped through there and I devoured the whole issue, the plot, the art, the Hostess Fruit Pie ads, the ads for like the 100 like army men and the fart powder, everything. I fell in love with that whole book, and it changed my life forever. So I don't even know who I couldn't even tell you who that kid was, but if I ever remember, I would love to thank him, because I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now if it wasn't for that one crazy, very simple moment. But that
could have been a possibility.
Yeah, but that issue is pretty awesome. And then years later, I got Stan Lee to sign it for me. So
most excellent.
Yeah.
Why are Preacher and Ex Machina some of your favorite comics?
They're just great stories. So
I love Preacher.
Yeah, I think somewhere in high school I read a lot of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. They were
Kevin Eastman.
Yeah, the old school ones when there was death involved and it was black and white. Everybody had red sashes around their or red masks. And they didn't eat pizza, and it was really hardcore. And then they changed, which I don't fault them at all for, and kind of made it more mass appealing. But somewhere between high school and college, I kind of fell out of comics. They got really expensive. I didn't have the money. I was concentrating on my studies. So I didn't read comics for about 3 years until I got to my senior year in college. And this new comic book store called Vault of Midnight opened up, which if you're from the Michigan area.
We have 3 of them now.
It's one of the premier comic stores in the country, if not the world, but in the Michigan area, it's very well known. And at that time, it's 2 weird-looking dudes who had set up shop in the first floor of this rickety old pink house in Ann Arbor, Michigan.
Are you serious? Wait. Are you about to say that you met Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon?
I wish, but it was Curtis and Steve, the 2 guys who ran Vault of Midnight.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh my goodness, that's mind-blowing right there.
I mean, to me, they were the Garth Ennis and Steve Dillon of the comic book world. But I remember I walked into their store. It was just open. My roommate told me about it, and I looked around, and I'm like, hey, man, this is a comic book store, right? They're like, yeah, you see comics and toys. I'm like, where's Spider-Man? Where's Superman? Where are the Avengers? I'm like, oh man, we don't have any of that. We have stuff from this new company called Image, and they have this book called Spawn, which you should read. We don't have DC, but we have their more adult imprint Vertigo, and they have this comic called Preacher, which you should read. And I'm like, all right, I'll give it a shot. Why not? And I read them, and those 2 books, again, life-changing. I never read anything like that before. And I think in that stage of my life, I was kind of maybe not really tired, but maybe grown. I felt like maybe it was a little too old to be reading guys in tights and capes and cowls and stuff like that. And I wanted just really good stories. So, Preacher, definitely a great story.
Oh, yeah.
Spawn, definitely a great story. A guy gets sent to hell and he comes back so he can take revenge and claim souls for the devil. Like, that's pretty, that was beyond the Avengers, or the Fantastic Four fighting Doctor Doom. Who cares about Doctor Doom when we have the devil, and or Genesis, or like Abominations. So I really took to that. And Ex Machina is the same thing. I read that years later by one of my favorite writers, Brian K. Vaughan.
Yeah.
But just they're great stories, and I think for maybe not everyone is into tights and guys wearing underwear on the outside, but anyone can read a great story. And these are ones I would have handed to people that are like, hey, maybe they're a little older. Like, hey, I haven't read a comic in a while. What would you read? And I'm like, if they can handle Preacher, I'll give them Preacher. If they need something a little more tame, I'll go like Ex Machina or something like that, or Walking Dead even.
I admitted to him later on that I was a big fool because my friend had suggested the Sandman comics by Neil Gaiman, and I was like, whatever. I was like, this doesn't have superheroes and stuff like that. And when I actually started reading it, I was good. I am a fool. I apologize to you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, so good. And
he introduced me to a lot of indie comics.
Yeah, for sure, which are great. These are guys who have amazing stories,
and
they're outside of normal stories. If the big two, Marvel and DC, are great, but they have certain standards they have to adhere to, and as such, the writers can't have a lot of freedom with their writing, I feel. But the indie comics, it's yours. You write whatever you want, and you draw whatever you want, and it's awesome.
For the most part, I would agree. There are some comics that I've read have been like, oh no.
Oh sure, I mean, there's a lot of garbage out there, but what I admire about those creators is that they took a shot.
Oh,
they put their own money into it, and might not be your cup of tea, but they're telling their story. That's just how they want to do it, and it might be awful, but awful and great is relative, especially in the comic book world.
Well, when I was going like, oh no, because like some of the concepts that were introduced in some of the comics that I read were like way over my head. Like, case in point, he had a great run on JLA, but sometimes some of Grant Morrison's stuff is just so far out there.
Oh sure, yeah, absolutely.
Like The Filth.
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of.
What was it? The Invisibles? Didn't he make that too?
But yes, I believe so. Yeah, so there's a lot of. Yeah, you're right. Some of it,
I enjoy what he comes up with. I mean, he's very creative, but some of the stuff is just so far over my head.
Yeah, you can't. Not everything's gonna be your cup of tea, and some of it's gonna be weird, and you might not fall in love with it right away. So, as such, you have the freedom to not keep reading it. But
for sure,
there's so many great stories out there.
Were there any writers that you found difficult to follow?
I mean, Morrison's one of them. He may not be my favorite. Other than everyone's pretty straightforward. And then, if you're a Batman fan, you got guys like Scott Snyder just knocking it out of the park, and then Tom King taking the reins from him later on, also knocking it out of the park. I mean, for the most part, I've been pretty. The writers in general have been speaking to me pretty well. But yeah, for whatever reason, and I haven't met him yet, but Brian K. Vaughan is just. It's like he's got a window into my soul or something, because most of the stuff he writes is really awesome.
Yeah, didn't he do We 3?
I believe so, yes.
With the cybernetic animals and stuff like that. That was with Frank Quitely?
I think so, Quitely.
I don't know how to pronounce his last name.
No, I believe it's Quitely.
But yeah, that was it was unsettling when I was reading that, but I did enjoy that comic, and I have enjoyed a lot of Brian K. Vaughan's stuff as well.
Yeah, and then there's just some of these guys who are so prolific. James Tynion in the Fourth, Colin Bunn, Charles Soule. Do these guys sleep? It seems like they're working on 20 different titles every month. And they knock it out. It's fantastic.
Do you feel what are some of your underrated comics that you feel don't get enough attention?
I mean, there are many. I'm going on kind of the image. I read a book on Manifest Destiny, which a lot of people have never heard of, but it's about the Lewis and Clark expedition, told with a fantasy bent. So. Okay. Lewis and Clark, the Westward Ho, which we all learned in class, but they run into plant-based zombies and giant ladybugs and sea serpents on their journey out west. Sacagawea is this badass, like, female Indian that's constantly saving their ass. All their men are constantly coming under attack by these weird, fantastical creatures. I'm like, this is awesome. Why don't they teach kids this in school? Like, it probably didn't happen this way, but who says it did in the history books? We don't know that, that it happened, the way I learned it in class either. So that's definitely one of them. Shaolin Cowboy, which if you
I have read that.
If you haven't read, and you don't really read as much as kind of look at it,
the whole thing, especially with like chainsaws on the
for sure,
on the bow staff.
Yeah, for sure. And then Matt Fraction's run on Hawkeye, which I don't think got nearly. A lot of people love it, but I don't think it got nearly the credit that it should have. Like, that's the story of Hawkeye that I want to see on Netflix, man, and a Netflix TV show. Like, that's Matt Fraction's Hawkeye. Put that on.
Do you think that'll happen?
No, no. But instead of I like Finn Jones, but Iron Fist was not that great.
I'll agree with you on that.
And
for sure.
Yeah, and. If they did a Matt Fraction adaptation of Hawkeye, I think like that, it's just such a great story. And again, all relative, of course, but it really spoke to me, and I think a lot of people. But I I didn't win any awards, I don't think.
Was it only 2 volumes?
There were, I think there are 3 or 4 trades at this point.
Because the last issue that I read through a trade was Cassie had went out to, I think, L.A. with Madame Mask.
Yes, yeah.
And she was getting caught up in that.
Yeah,
and then that's where it stopped.
Yeah, which I think is great. I love, I love Hawkeye. I love Clint Barton, but I love Kate Bishop even more, I think, for various reasons. I just love that she's a ball buster, and she'll call Clint out on his crap because he's got a lot of crap. And he's not the greatest guy, but he cares about his apartment building being overrun by Russian mob, and he's got a lot of heart. And he doesn't have any superpowers, but he's somehow made it onto the Avengers, and I think that's that says a lot, I think. But if you go out and I've seen on I have kids, I see I go shopping with them. I see on a lot of kids Avengers shirts. They don't have enough for all the Avengers, so they always freaking leave out Black Widow and Hawkeye. I'm like, dude. They're part of the team. You can't leave them out. It annoys me to no end. And I think if everyone read this run of Hawkeye, they would think differently.
Are there any canceled comic book series that you would like to see come back?
Canceled, for me, yes.
Gotham Central by Brubaker, and I enjoyed Next Wave by Warren Ellis.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of any. I mean, most of them get canceled for low sales.
Like a very short. Yeah, I understand for like low sales and whatnot. But.
Right. I'm trying to think of anything that I kind of miss, because I read so many. Like if they get canceled, a lot of them I don't even miss them. So I can't. Nothing really comes to mind. Oddly enough. Yeah.
On to the next question. Do you check out webcomics?
I do, but I'll admit probably the last ones I've read were like before Diary of a Wimpy Kid blew up a couple years ago. That started as a webcomic, and it was one that I kind of fell in love with, and then it blew up. But I emailed the creator when it was just a small online webcomic. It was, I can't remember what website it was on even, but I emailed the creator. I was like, hey man, just want to let you know you're doing a really good job, and I hope you find great success. I really love your
That's
comic.
always nice to do to
yeah, and he replies like, hey man, thanks. He's like, hey, they're about to publish a book. I'm not sure I was going to translate from the web to the book, but I'm going to give it a shot. And if you see now, that dude's blown. I mean, they've made 3 or 4 movies already. His books are beloved by kids around the world. It was the progression from his simple little webcomic to household name now is pretty awesome. And I hope that happens for a lot of webcomics out right now. Okay. Do you have a favorite that I should be checking out?
There's 2 that I would recommend.
Okay.
Perry Bible Fellowship by Nicholas Gerwich. And Octopus Pie by Meredith Graham.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I just I don't have time to read all this, and I need recommendations.
Well,
frankly.
I'll say Perry Bible Fellowship because it's not like he puts it out sporadically,
right,
and it's never like a continuing story. It's always these little shorts that he does that are really messed up.
Right.
But I would highly recommend that. Now, obviously, you're massively into comics. Do you venture into manga?
I haven't, and again, that's just the sheer amount of stuff that is out, and we don't carry manga at the stash either, and that's only because Walt Flanagan isn't into it, and if we're not into something, we don't carry it because we don't want to act like we're into something.
Oh, that's fair, dude. I mean, I only have his one recommendation.
Yeah,
Berserk by Kentaro Miura.
I love the name. I'm in.
It's actually a dark fantasy medieval manga, and it's not dressed. I mean, it's not. I'm sure you've seen plenty of manga art,
right?
But this is like a very violent and brutal world, which is ultimately a story of revenge about this dude named Guts who found a family, really cared about them, and got royally screwed over by one of his friends, and now he's fighting all these.
Sounds like Old Man Logan, to be honest with you, but
this is out way before Old Man.
Oh
Logan.
Yeah, okay, cool.
Way before. I mean, the dude's been working on it for 30+ years.
Oh wow, okay, yeah, his longevity. I mean, the Japanese definitely do things on another level,
and the artwork is so detailed. It's like insane. I'm like, you don't have to put this much work into this, but I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we don't carry it at the store, so I can't read it for free.
No,
and
there's ways around that, but that's neither here nor there.
There are, but I would like to plop down. That the manga with the 2 dudes kissing and all that. I'm like, hey, Walt, we should carry this.
It's gonna have
like
yaoi. Is that it?
Yeah.
So we're gonna go on to a different subject right here.
Let's go away.
Obviously, G.I. Joe.
Yes.
First exposure to G.I. Joe.
I was 9 years old. I just moved to a new neighborhood in South Bend, Indiana, and I was having a rough time adjusting. My parents took me to a store that no longer exists called Service Merchandise, which I don't know if anybody remembers. There was a very weird ordering system where you would pick out the toy you wanted, but you would put in an order and it would come on a conveyor belt later on. But I was looking around and I saw the Cobra Hiss tank, and I'm like, I want that. That'll make me feel better. Oh. and I got it, and I was one of the first kids in that new neighborhood to play with G.I. Joe. Everyone was into He-Man, and I was like, you guys are into. I rolled in. I was like, you guys are into this muscular dude wearing like fuzzy underpants. In what way do you relate to this character? And they couldn't answer it. I'm like, and I had my G.I. Joes. I'm like, this is cool. This is the middle of the Cold War. These dudes had like these insanely detailed weapons. They had the file cards. They had personalities. They had specialties. They had cool code names. They had cool vehicles. I'm like, dude, this is what I'm playing with. If you want to hang out, I'll be playing G.I. Joe over here. And all my friends flipped, and they threw all their He-Mans in a box, and we became like a G.I. Joe neighborhood. So it was cool. My brother got into collecting as well, my younger brother. So he would collect the G.I. Joes, and I would collect Cobra, so we could fight with each other.
Nice. I used to collect the little cards.
The file cards were great. Yeah, all written by Larry Hama, which is cool now because I go to cons with him. We'll pop up at the same con together.
Seems like a nice dude. I've talked to him
really
briefly.
Cool, very low key.
Yeah,
but
seriously.
Very insanely talented, insanely cool, and like he created my whole world when I was from 8 to 12, man. And even everything from the comic books. I read the comic book, the Marvel comics. Definitely watched the cartoon, and I collected the toys. That was my whole world in the 80s for sure, and. Yeah, I love that. It was cool that, I kind of converted the neighborhood to G.I. Joe. And I still love it.
Do you feel that, as an adult now, do you feel the animated show still holds up?
The old one?
Yes.
I do, but it was on Netflix for a while, and I started watching it. My wife rolls in. She was like, "You like this?" I'm like, "Oh, yeah, man. This was my life." She didn't get it. I think, I don't know. My kids didn't really, they're into more of the, like Steven Universe and those kind of cartoons. So they're a little brighter, better animated. So I don't think, my kids aren't really into the G.I. Joe cartoon. I think it still holds up.
Did you check out Warren Ellis's G.I. Joe Resolute?
I have not. Which is it a little darker take? On,
it's way. I mean, like in the first episode, you see. I want to say, what is it? Commander Blood.
Major Blood. Yes.
Major Blood, dead at the footsteps of Abe Lincoln.
Wow.
The Washington Monument.
Yeah.
Like.
Okay, I'm in.
Oh, it's a very short series. I'm pretty sure you can find it online, but Warren Ellis wrote the whole story to it. And
that's awesome. Yeah, I'm still stuck in the vintage era, so all this new stuff that, the IDW comic and all that.
You can easily get the whole series done in less than an hour. That's how
short.
Cool. It's very short episodes, like 5 to 10 minutes each.
Yeah, it's weird, because I always thought of G.I. Joe in their own kind of world, and it kind of related to the real world, especially during like the Reagan era and all that. But IDW's kind of mashed them up with the Transformers and all that. It's a little harder to get into, because I never thought of those worlds crossing.
No, obviously you watched animation and stuff when you were growing up. Did you ever venture into anime?
I did, but only later on when I got into college. I took a trip to Taiwan, and everyone was really into Totoro and Miyazaki.
Okay.
And I got into that. Outside of that, I never really got into the Neon Genesis or the Gundams. Or
that's very nice. That's a nice reference right there.
Yeah. Or the Cowboy Bebop.
Never watched. I would, if you had to watch one anime series, it would be Cowboy Bebop.
Okay.
26 episodes, self-contained, one of the best dubs ever. Hands down. If I had to recommend just one, because it goes to show that
anime too. You're okay, because I know dubbing is not very popular in the.
It really depends on the series, and I'm not really one of those people like, my anime expertise level. I only watch things sub. No, right. Cowboy Bebop has an amazing dub. Okay, and I was very fortunate to interview the main voice actor from it.
Oh, that's awesome.
Steve Blue, who plays Spike Spiegel. Totally cool cat.
That's awesome. But now I've been I watch the stuff they put on Netflix. Attack on Titan's great.
Oh yeah,
I think One Punch Man stuff.
That's
like
another
that.
good one too.
Yeah, I'm trying to get into those for sure.
7 Deadly Sins is on Netflix. That's not a bad series.
Okay.
Either.
Yeah, but Attack on Titan's the one I was like, wow, this is pretty cool. Like just mindless giants that just want to eat people. It's pretty.
And then the like, are you in season 2?
I'm still in season 1. Yeah, I'm watching them very slowly. But I mean, I love the whole idea of the scout regiment. And this dude.
Oh, it's a solid series.
This dude watched his mom get eaten, and he wants revenge. Man, he's out for blood. But their technology is far inferior. That they have to.
Continue watching the series especially when they get into season 2.
Okay.
Things are going to change. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yeah, and I love that kids and adults are into Attack on Titan. It's like kind of it's more of an adult story for sure, but kids can relate to their parents getting eaten by giant titans.
So we're going to go into the final subject of this interview. It'll be around podcasts.
Yes.
So when I was listening to some of your podcasts while doing research, you played some mini bosses on one of your episodes.
Sure.
So are there any other VGM bands that you're into?
I mean, I don't know them all by name. Anyone that can make a video game theme rock.
Power Glove?
Power Glove's, one that's Power Glove mini bosses. I mean, I'm sure there are a ton more.
Oh, my goodness.
Those are probably the two that I'm more familiar with.
Power Glove's amazing. I just saw them recently in January at this awesome event called MagFest.
Just cool that the nostalgia that brings up. You're rocking at a concert and they bust out with the Contra theme song. Just the emotions that bring up.
There's so many great bands out there. It's if you're really into music, I would highly recommend you going out to MagFest, which stands for Music and Gaming.
Right. Yeah.
Because it's a music festival centered around video games.
That's awesome. But I mean, I spent hours.
I know you
hovering
do
around
your own thing.
An 8-bit Nintendo, man. Just the music just gets burned into your brain. But
Have you gone to any of the symphonies based around that?
No, I haven't. Just time and money, man. Time and money. I mean, they sound awesome, but just getting to them has proven tough.
So let's talk about your podcast.
Absolutely.
You have 3 from what I understand. Ming and Mike, I Sell Comics, and Sam and Ming.
Yes.
Do you have another one?
I do The Secret Stash, which is a comic book and companion podcast. Kind of we call it's like a low rent Talking Dead, really, where we recap the comic book man episodes after they've aired. I've jumped into a whole bunch. I get made fun of on Brian Johnson and Walt Flanagan's podcast, Tell 'em Steve Dave, which is insanely popular. A lot of fans here at Astronomicon wearing their merchandise, which is really cool. And I guess done a lot. Mike and I just opened up a podcast studio. It's a recording studio.
Shared Universe Podcast Studio?
Yeah, it's a recording studio specifically for podcasting, where if you want to start a podcast, you come in and we teach you how to do it. If you have a podcast, we help you become better. But the genesis of that podcast studio started here in the Detroit area. There is a group here called Podcast Detroit.
Oh, yeah.
Which launched that very idea of opening up a podcast studio specifically for podcasters. I stopped by and podcasted with them. I had so much fun. And, Mike was like, hey, do you think that would work in Jersey? I'm like, there's only one way to find out. And we basically ripped him off. I'll give him all the credit for sure. But we're such good friends with them. And we've actually been working together, referring clients to each other, really.
Well, that's pretty cool.
Which is really cool. And I think this is something that could spread worldwide for sure. So, podcasting is something that we were kind of introduced to and not forced to do, but encouraged to do by Kevin Smith. And it's proved to be something I've really, really fallen in love with.
Now, one of the interviews that I watched on you mentioned that you were thinking of starting up a podcast on vinyl. How's that coming along?
I didn't. Oh man, yeah, you're right. I came up with an idea where we would go to the record store across the street, like once a week or whenever, and pick out a record, and then we would roll some of the tracks on the podcast, but talk about the history of the album, and just kind of bring up the emotions that the songs came up with. I've not found a suitable co-host for this yet. Was
it going to be a particular genre that you were going to focus on? Or
No,
just
it would have been anything that we could dig through at the used record store. And time, my friend. Time. I really feel I need the right co-host who loves music as much as I do, and I just haven't found that yet. Because Mike's into Barry Manilow, and, and he listens to white people music. So not to disparage white people, but there's a whole world out there. So.
And you just recently opened up a new place called the Coral Sword.
Yeah,
you want to talk about that as we're wrapping this up?
Time and money, but Coral Sword is a coffee, comics, and gaming cafe that I recently partnered with a bunch of people in the Houston area. We had our opening a week ago, and it went insanely well. It was pretty crazy. If you're anywhere near Houston or the Texas area, it's located in Southeast Houston. The place is called Coral Sword, which is in reference to the Final Fantasy video game series. It's one of the weapons in there.
Yeah.
And I've been to some gaming places that supposedly had good coffee, but they didn't. Coffee was an afterthought. I've been to some coffee shops where they would throw a couple games in the corner with missing pieces, and they try to call themselves a gaming cafe. We just really wanted to do both really awesome. So coffee is a main focus, and gaming, board gaming, video gaming, trading card gaming is a huge focus. And then we have a library of over 100 trade paperbacks.
That's
we can
nice.
Just sit down and read and drink coffee at the same time if you wanted to. We'll have beer and wine in about 6 weeks when the liquor license comes through. But this all stemmed from me just wanting to drink like a really good coffee and read like DMZ or 100 Bullets or Saga.
Brian Wood.
Yeah, for sure.
DMZ.
Yeah.
100 Bullets is Brian Azzarello.
Yeah, and I wanted to do that at the stash, but Walt was like, you can't put an espresso machine back here. We don't serve food here. We're a comic book store. But to me, either a coffee or a beer and reading a comic is a natural combination to me. And then one of our partners is our right fielder for the San Francisco Giants, Hunter Pence, 2-time World Series champion. We found he was a big geek, and we ended up partnering with him through a series of weird events.
Isn't it awesome when you run into somebody and you find out that you're a geek?
Yeah, especially because I'm a big baseball fan. So, to find out that he loves Magic the Gathering, and he's a highly, highly competitive video game player.
Nice.
Yeah, so he's a big Twitch streamer as well. So we built he built a Twitch streaming booth in the back of Coral Sword, and it's also doubles as a podcast and streaming booth. So I mean, we got it all there. But if you look at it, and you're like, wow, this is a place that Hunter Pence would hang out. This is all the stuff that Ming Chen likes. This is all the stuff that all of our partnership group love, and we wanted to spread that love to everybody else. And it's been pretty much a smashing success for all the geeks in the Houston, Texas area.
Okay, we're in the final 3 questions.
Yeah.
Is there anything else new that you wanted to talk about?
I think other than all of that, Comic Book Men comes back February 25th on AMC. We have 7 more episodes left this season, so it's pretty cool. On the last episode of the season, I just found out, is the one where we travel to Funko HQ in Everett, Washington, and we were presented with our own Funko Pop figures.
Oh, nice, dude.
Yeah, so with that, in probably about a month, we're going to have a run of our Funko Pop figures. I've seen them. They look pretty awesome, and they'll be online at jayandsilentbob.com. So all the Comic Book Men plus an exclusive Kevin figure will be on there. So that's pretty cool. Not every day you get your own pop figure. So
I certainly won't be getting one anytime soon.
I mean, you know what? You never know though. Who knew that there would be a Ming Chen figure? That's not. I mean, I'm just a geek that got lucky, and it just happened. You truly never know what'll happen. That's why for all the kids out there and some of the adults, keep doing what you love doing. You never know what will happen. You could get a TV show, or you could get invited to Astronomicon, which is my main focus this weekend.
This has been a pretty cool event. And I'm not saying it just because I'm here. It's been a pretty cool
I've
event.
been pretty pleasantly surprised at the turnout and the fans. Everything's been really great.
Especially with the crappy weather.
Yeah, it's been great. And I just love coming back to Michigan. I'm a native here, and it's cool. It's cool to meet fellow Michigan pop culture fans.
If people wanted to reach out to you online, where could they find you?
I'm all over. You can follow me Twitter and Instagram, MingChen37, MINGCHEN 37. Facebook, you can just search Ming Chen Comic Book Man. I think I'm on Snapchat and LinkedIn and Marco Polo and all that other stuff. But if you just want to stick to the regular stuff, I'm pretty easy to find.
Final question.
Yes, go ahead.
What would you like to say to all your fans throughout the years?
I would like to say to all my fans, thank you. Thank you for loving pop culture, and thank you for loving 5 knuckleheads from New Jersey. If you watch the show, thank you very much, because we love doing it. If you watch it, obviously we're having a ton of fun. And if you've watched throughout the years, it's because of you that we have 7 seasons and hopefully counting. And I just... And if you're near where I go to a lot of cons, if you're near, I would love to meet everybody in person, because it's when I was growing up, I didn't have a lot of friends that loved pop culture. It wasn't cool to make it known, but now it is, and it's cool to have people to talk to. So if I'm even near you, come. I love meeting people in person. But thanks for everything. Thanks for listening to the podcast. Thanks for supporting Kevin Smith. Like it's all for love, I guess. So thank you very much.
All right, well, Ming, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you.
Folks, this is Joe from MIGeekScene here at Astronomicon with Ming Chen. Take it easy.